This episode is proudly supported by Westholme Australian Wagyu. Here's Stephen Sinclair from Jackson's on George.
In general, Westholme, I use several items on the menu from them. I always look to source products for their flavour. And with Westholme, I think they deliver that 100%. Australian Wagyu, in particular, Westholme is world class. Westholme is recognised for their quality all over the world. And then that's why, and when I tried it, and I absolutely love the flavour. This is, why I decided to put them on the menu.
Westholme believe that when nature leads, flavour follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
Just the selection. There's selection on the bottom. I guess there's a lot of sea urchins in the ocean, but very few of them are commercially viable to harvest, depending on the weather conditions, the time of the year, seasonality, and whatever else.
Revered by chefs globally, sea urchins are a true delicacy, enhancing dishes with a touch of the ocean's essence. Australia is home to two main commercial species, the long spine, Centrostephanus rogersi, and short spine, Heliosidaris entherama. Both are harvested by skilled divers. According to Urchin Godfather, Dave Allen, these Australian varieties rival the finest sea urchins globally, offering an unparalleled taste of the ocean's bounty. The Australian sea urchin industry is barely a generation old, emerging in recent decades as demand for premium seafood has grown. Dave Allen, a pioneer in the field, started during its formative years. His expertise in harvesting and processing sea urchins is a story of the industry itself, setting standards for quality and sustainability from its early days.
Okay, it's David Allen down in Hobart, Tasmania. So I've been a fisherman, diver, processor, exporter down here in Tasmania for close to 30 years now. For me, it started with some mates that were abalone divers. So I started out just going out operating the boats for the abalone divers, and another friend that was doing scalefish for the live markets in Chinatown in Melbourne and Sydney. So that's where it all began. I sort of progressed from there to getting my own boat, getting some licenses, doing some scale fishing, and progressed into a bit of commercial diving for sea urchins, oysters, periwinkles. Well, I'd always been a really keen, it started at a really early age. I was sort of had this affinity with the ocean. I was surfing, I was snorkeling, I was, spent my time hitchhiking to the beach in high school and whatever else. And then obviously the guys I knew up the coast that were abalone diving, spiked my interest. And then obviously that was sort of a pretty closed shop back in those days. There wasn't many opportunities to sort of start a commercial abalone diving career. So I sort of started having a look at some other ways to get into some diving. And so the commercial dive industry is only a small one down here in Tasmania, a couple of little niche products, and there was just one small sea urchin processor, and I think I started catching a few of the native urchins for her in about maybe 2000. Lady Chico was a Japanese lady, and she'd come and set up a business based out of Launceston, and in those days it was really, really difficult to get, I guess, a Guernsey to be one of her divers or suppliers. And, it was really, really strict, difficult conditions to operate under, to be able to meet, to be able to be sort of viable. Her selection was quite difficult. So that was my first insight into the world of sea urchins. And at that time, that was the only, even though the other species, the Centrostephanus, were abundant, there was no real available market for those. So it was just doing the Helio native urchins.
Learning the trade of sea urchin harvesting requires a keen understanding of the ocean's rhythms and the ability to make precise judgments underwater. Dave's mastered the art of selecting the right time and location to dive, often guided by water temperature, tides and seasonal changes. He developed the skill to distinguish between good, better and best urchins by assessing their size, shell condition and the fullness of roe while still submerged, ensuring only the finest specimens are harvested.
Just the selection, there's selection on the bottom, I guess. There's a lot of sea urchins in the ocean, but very few of them are commercially viable to harvest, depending on the weather conditions, the time of the year, seasonality and whatever else. So to learn your way and learn the ropes, and not many people persisted. If that, most would get discouraged quite quickly after spending a lot of time diving, and I think when I first started, I struggled to cover the fuel in the boat on a daily basis. So Chico was good enough, I sort of teamed up and spent a bit of time with some of the more experienced divers that had done more of it, and just sort of earned my stripes a little bit that way. But I sort of moved more into commercial scale fishing, away from I sort of had a hiatus in the middle and did a couple of years, 2 or 3 years at that, and then moved more into the scalefish sector, and then came back. I think I rejoined commercial diving in about 2008 or 9.
Dave Allen has worked closely with his catcher and processor mentors, refining his techniques for harvesting and processing premium sea urchin roe. Collaborating with a top food service distributor and renowned Australian chefs, Dave's helped introduce uni to the market, ensuring it met the highest culinary standards. This partnership has played a key role in bringing world-class Tasmanian sea urchin to discerning diners.
We started off, we sold a few of the range extension sea urchins to a small processor in New South Wales, and there was logistical issues with that. It didn't really work out so well, and I just sort of thought, well, if and that was more supplying a lower grade product for Maori and the Pacific Island communities, and everything, all the previous research done up until then had said that that the Centra Stephanus would never be a high end or sashimi grade product. And I did a bit of research and a lot of Googling and thought, I reckon that's not quite right, and sort of away we went on the journey, and with some assistance, I don't know. There's a lot of other people that were really instrumental along the way. Our friend Wayne up there in Sydney from Johto pounded the pavements, getting it in front of reputable high-end chefs, and a really good friend Kazu in Tokyo, and multiple trips backwards and forwards to Japan and visiting processors and wholesalers and getting that really true and deep understanding that's centuries old tradition that goes behind sea urchin in the Japanese cuisine and processing. So yeah, it was a fun up and down journey along the way. Yeah.
Tasmania is home to 2 primary sea urchin species: the long spine, Centra Stephanus rogersi, and the short spine, Heliosidaris etheronama. The long spine, with its black, spiny exterior, is more aggressive in its feeding habits, often causing significant ecological damage by overgrazing kelp beds. In contrast, the native short spine, characterised by its reddish-purple hue, is more sustainable and highly prized for its rich golden roe, known for its delicate, sweet flavour. Both species are harvested, but the short spine is more sought after for the premium markets.
So we had a Heliosidaris erythrogama, I think is the scientific name, or pretty close to that. And they're native in the southern states. We have them in Victoria Tasmania and South Australia. And we sort of along that journey along the way, obviously if we're going to start a sea urchin business, the more months you can operate, the better. So we sort of started as a conquest to, turn a marine pest that was, impacting the marine habitat into a viable food product. So that one's Centra stephanus Roger's eye. And it's peculiar that it's a tropical water species sea urchin, and generally tropical water species sea urchins aren't, highly sought after or revered in that sashimi high-end sort of marketplace. But with its adaptation, it's native to New South Wales. It's come down in the EAC more and more each year. It's sort of morphed itself a little bit. It's the same species, but the roe comes out a little bit differently. Obviously the seaweed that it eats in Tasmania isn't the same as the seaweed species that it's eating up there in New South Wales. So even though it's the same species and it's the same sort of roe, the cold water and the different seaweeds seem to make it a bit more palatable for the Asian clients and customers. So that was our target when we started, and then we thought, well, if we're going to be sea urchin processors, we should have a look at these native species as well. And, quickly discovered with some of the, the big hitters out of Tokyo and Japan that our native urchin here was as good as, their, Russian buffoon uni and the Hokkaido urchins that are, probably the most highly sort of have the best reputation in the international market. Our native product was right up there, challenging with the best of those. So the Heliosidaris is a short spine urchin, comes in multiple colours. You'll see brown, purple, white with yellow spikes, all sort of variations, but all the one species. And there's some out in the wider ocean off the coast or along the coastline, but a lot of the harvest comes from bays and estuaries where they don't work well in the wave action and the more exposed coastlines, as opposed to the long spine or the Centra stephanus that you don't find in those estuarine or more sheltered bays. They're more prolific out in the actual ocean.
Export markets, particularly Japan, have played a pivotal role in shaping the criteria for premium uni. Japanese demand for the highest quality roe, characterised by its firm texture, vibrant colour and delicate flavour, set the standards for the Australian industry. This influence has driven local processors and divers to meet strict quality requirements, forming the foundation for growth and international recognition of the Australian sea urchin industry.
The first sightings from the abalone divers of the Centra stephanus sea urchins turning up around the Bay of Fires was in the mid-70s, and they basically had been left unchecked for close to 40 years. So when we very first started establishing markets and we could go out there and dive helter-skelter, we were getting some enormous catch rates, 400 or 500 kilos an hour. So obviously in a 6 metre aluminium boat, it was a fairly short day. We'd leave the boat ramp at 9 and be back to the processing plant before lunch. And obviously high volume, low value, but enough days a week you could sort of make it count, and we squeezed out a bit of a living out of it. The native urchins are a much different story. The selection is much more critical, so you would be back on maybe 70 to 100 kilos an hour, maybe maximum, harvesting the native urchins, but obviously with a higher dollar value. And amongst all this happening, a lot of our other seafood out of Tasmania was all the original markets for abalone, lobster, tuna, everything started in Japan, and then slowly, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, the other areas of Asia became bigger players than the Japanese market had originally been. And so we've seen that big transfer with the sea urchin in 2009 and 10. Everything went to Japan. There was little to no consumption. I don't have statistics at hand, but you would know, how many restaurants around Sydney or Melbourne, Australia, had sea urchin on the menu. It was virtually unheard of, but it's quite prolific throughout, not only just Asian dining. Now the more Western restaurants and Western cuisine is sort of adapting itself and using sea urchin in different recipes, and it's been traditional in a lot of the European, the Italians and Greeks and everything it's very traditional in their cooking as well. So we've seen not only the expansion in Australia in our domestic markets, but the Chinese appetite for that style of dining's growing, and so the consumption across the planet, I think, would probably growing, but reducing probably in Japan.
Diving on a hooker system to harvest sea urchins is both an art and a skill. Hooker diving involves using a surface-supplied air system, allowing divers to stay underwater for extended periods while searching for urchins along rocky seabeds. The diver must carefully assess the terrain, using experience to identify areas where urchins thrive. Selecting the best specimens requires skill in identifying the healthiest, fullest urchins while still underwater. The diver then uses specialised tools to gently harvest them without damaging the delicate roe. Precision, patience and knowledge of marine conditions are key to this sustainable and efficient method of harvesting.
Generally for myself, I was never the earliest guy at the boat ramp, or let the sun get high enough in the sky that the night feeders have all gone home to wherever they go to. And so you're diving, obviously looking for, the habitat that's going to produce the greatest value or greatest return from your urchins. There's a guy, so it's all surface supplied air, so there's a compressor running on the boat. The guys now have moved on to nitrox as the urchins are reducing, they're diving deeper. So when we started back then in 2009 or 10, we could easily, fill our catch in a very short amount of time. It was rare that we dive much over 15 or 16 metres deep. The divers now sort of 12, 15 years later are diving in 25 metres, 30 metres regularly. So we never had that to deal with. The air comes from the boat down a dive hose to the diver. So you need a really skilled operator, obviously, in the boat that doesn't end up with your dive hose wrapped around the propellers or cut off by the propellers. And then they have an extended bit of rope with a weight on it. And they drop that with an empty catch bag or catch net attached with a clip to the weight. They drop that to the diver, hopefully as close to the diver as they can manage, and the diver would unclip the empty bag and clip on a bag that's full of urchins, and then they haul the urchins to the surface. So we were filling like 35 to 50 kilo bags every 5 minutes basically in those early days. So it was a real workout for the guys in the boat. It was a physically demanding and mentally challenging job in the wind and the waves and everything else that they had to counter to get the catch from the sea floor out of 12, 13, 14, 15 metres back into the boat safely. Then the catch had to be covered with wet hessian and whatever, keep the sun and the wind off the sea urchins. A couple of hours later, then we'd head back to the boat ramp, pull the boat out of the water and unload the urchins, transfer them into the back of a refrigerated truck that would then take them back to the processing plant for processing.
Sea urchin processing is considered one of the most difficult and specialised forms of seafood processing, requiring a delicate balance of art and science. The process involves multiple, intricate stages, including careful opening of the urchin, precise roe extraction, and meticulous cleaning to preserve the texture and flavour. Each step must be performed with precision to maintain the quality of the delicate roe. The combination of skilled hands and a deep understanding of the product makes this process uniquely challenging.
It's incredibly labour intensive. So the initial bins of urchins gets built onto a table, and then they're all turned the correct way up, and with Japanese cracking tools, which are like a dual-beaked spade that you pull the handle and it cracks them into two pieces. And then the next stage is with specifically designed spoons. Every sea urchin has 5 pieces of roe, so obviously if you damage one piece out of 5, there's 20% of your yield is already damaged or reduced. So, ultimately you get 5 nice pieces of roe in one piece per piece out of the sea urchin shell, out of the 2 halves, and they go into a processing basket that's in a chilled saltwater brine. And then there's a multi-stage cleaning process. The gut and the membrane is stuck to the roe. That has to be hand moved by people with tweezers, surgical tweezers, then remove all that. And then it goes through a specific brining, 3 or 4 stage brining process to firm and preserve the roe. Then drained in a cool room and put on an absorbent paper towel to wick away any excess moisture. And then you have to have another, that's sort of half of the process, and then you have a second team or team B, and they go through and select and grade all the pieces of roe. So they need to be, so there's the texture. So the finer the texture, the higher the grade, and then the colour, the brighter straw yellow colour is golden colour is more preferred, and that's dictated by the feed and the bottom conditions, or the ocean, the condition of the reef where the urchins have been harvested. So you end up with basically 4 or 5 grades of urchins, depending, all with different uses. The lowest grades generally get frozen and then on processed or value added in, freeze dried, made into sauces, shakes, salts, different sort of flavourings, up to the pinnacle of your A or double A grade, which is the finest texture, brightest colours that will find its way into the, the top end sashimi and sushi bars around the world.
Dave's close relationship with Japan's sea urchin industry has been instrumental in establishing a premium Australian uni program. Japan's high standards for quality, texture and flavour has guided Dave in refining his harvesting and processing techniques. This collaboration helped align Australian sea urchins with the expectations of the discerning Japanese market, elevating the product to world-class status.
I guess the very first time I went to Japan, and I was collected from Narita Airport, and I think we spoke earlier about my friend Murataki-san, and he was actually the driver of the company, and he collected me, and that was in 2012, and we have an amazing friendship that goes beyond sea urchins now, that remains to this day. And before I was allowed to go to any processors or anything, I had 2 or 3 days that was just basically, a very generic history of sea urchins, what they meant to the Japanese people, and then, the respect and everything that comes with, the higher scale processes within the Japanese community. So a history of the diving, the harvesting, everything. So I was sort of versed and understood, the value and the esteem that came with the good divers and processors. And then obviously out of Tasmania, we were the 25% of the world's abalone supply, and the greatest abalone and the greatest lobster, and sea urchins was just this byproduct that no one had, little to no interest. And then I started seeing in this Asian setting throughout the Asian countries, but in Japan, that people they just climb straight over a pile of abalone to get to this, mystique of the magical sea urchin roe on the other side of the pile. So that started, registering that this isn't a byproduct, and this isn't a marine pest. This is a highly sought after. We're up there, it's akin to caviar and those other really high end marine products. Yeah, I had a baptism of fire, and I think maybe on my very first visit after I'd sort of done my 3-day introduction, we made a gallon of sake and about 55 different sorts of sea urchin. Later, we got back to our hotel room from Ginza to have about 90 minutes sleep and be at the Squidgy Market or Squidjiki Market for a 5 a.m. start at the sea urchin auction the following morning. I still look back and shudder. The bad Aussies, hungover Aussies there, but that in itself was an eye-opener. I think there was about 18 different countries represented on the auction table, and we watched sea urchin get auctioned everywhere from about $30 a kilo right through to about $1,200 a kilo, and all the different, the marketing techniques and the branding and everything that went how it all worked and whatever else. So yeah, there was many late nights and some grimaces, as some of the sea urchin products I have aren't as palatable as others, but I definitely quickly got an appreciation of why the stuff that was $1,000 a kilo, commanded those prices, as opposed to just the skill and the art and the technique of the girls in the processing facilities, like thatched, blankets, they're just perfect. The attention to detail and the time and effort they go to presenting the stuff in those traditional timber trays is second to none.
Premium quality sea urchin is defined by a harmonious balance of colour, texture and flavour. The roe should exhibit a vibrant golden to deep orange hue, signalling its freshness and richness. Texture is equally important, with top-grade uni boasting a firm yet creamy consistency that melts in the mouth. Flavour must be a delicately sweet with a pronounced briny umami depth, evoking the ocean's essence. Each of these elements, colour, texture and flavour, must align perfectly to achieve premium status.
You'll always find the finer the texture or the better the flavour. Then obviously everyone buys with their eyes, so they like the nice, pretty, bright colours. It's quite funny in our native urchins, sometimes the not so great colours that have the fine texture, the flavours every bit as good as the really bright, bright, lovely golden colours. But that buy with your eyes thing doesn't really work. If it's sort of like a more browny, greyer colour, it's hard to convince people that the flavour's just as good. With the Centris Stephanus, it's sort of the other way. If the colour's dull or brown or grey, the flavour won't be great. It needs to be that really bright yellow, beautiful roe with the fine texture to get that good flavour experience.
Seasonality is crucial in producing premium quality uni because sea urchin's roe quality fluctuates with their reproductive cycles and environmental conditions. The best uni is harvested when the roe is at its peak maturity, typically before or after spawning, resulting in fuller, richer and more flavourful roe. Water temperature, food availability and natural breeding rhythms all influence the roe's texture, colour and flavour. Harvesting during the optimal season ensures the uni delivers the highest quality and meets premium market standards.
I have very fixed and firm ideas on the seasonality of both of the species of sea urchins, and I'm frequently having discussions with divers and other processors, trying to relay it back to if you have a vineyard and you want to make beautiful wine, you don't go and harvest all the grapes while they're still bitter and sour on the vines. You let them mature, and the same, you don't leave them on the vines a month after they should have been harvested. And I think that's, that we're seeing damage, especially with the Centra Stephanus, of processing too early in the season. The recoveries are really low. Internationally, it's a time of low supply, so there's wholesalers out there actively looking for sea urchin supply, but I think it's more about us educating them that it's not ready yet. We need to hold back, because then there's connotations in the market, like a piece of underripe sea urchin roe is, I guess the best way I can explain is like a pithy bit of orange. The cells in the orange segment of orange haven't swelled up with juice or anything yet. Sea urchin's very similar, so you end up with all the pith or the membrane that should be holding the beautiful flavoured, juice sort of thing of the sea urchin that's not there. So we really need to grow up as an industry and stick to the defined seasons. And then we have the issue with our native sea urchins, as they've grown in value and appeal. They have a limited catch, so we have a race to get between the processors and the divers to get the greatest share of that available catch. So quite often we miss it. So our season starts on the 1st of September. I think for a couple of years there it was finished within a month. So you can't start in August again next year until the new TAC becomes available. So in some areas the urchins are already in August, but we can't access them because we haven't got a new TAC to be able to start. And then there's other areas that are getting caught before they're ready to be caught, because the whole TAC's been caught as the different zones get. So we've got there's problematic issues with seasonalities with both species at the moment, that I guess as we grow up and become a more robust industry, that will sort itself out, I guess. But it's definitely not ideal at the moment. This is just personally my opinion. I think for Centra Stephanus sea urchins, it's definitely mid to late January at the earliest, and they're basically finished somewhere between the middle and the end of June. You might run, as I said, fish don't carry calendars, and we've all seen you get an unseasonably, the old fishermen always say drought on land is drought in the water. You get a later and early spring, that will affect it a little bit, but mid to late January is definitely the start here in Tasmania. I can't comment in New South Wales, obviously. I'm not aware of their seasons. I think they can generally get away a little bit earlier than us. I think their season probably, should probably close a little bit earlier than ours, but I'm not really sure. But here it's the middle of June, end of June is definitely the end of it. And then traditionally our Helio season went, August through till the end of October or into November.
The Australian uni industry, though still young, is rapidly maturing as demand for premium sea urchin grows. To maintain and enhance its global reputation, the industry requires structured management and oversight. Implementing clear quality standards, sustainable practices, and efficient supply chains will be key to consistently delivering the best uni to market and securing Australia's position as a premium global supplier.
I guess I see we're at a crossroads. I think from 2010 until now, the price of sea urchin roe's probably gone up by 300 or 400%. So obviously that becomes more lucrative for new entrants and stuff. It takes a lot of time and effort to earn your stripes, to be able to meet the standard, to be able to get the lucrative prices. Then, there's definitely, I think we've seen, that we've had incidents here in Tasmania where, one oyster growing area will be impacted, and then, Sam Newman's on the footy show saying don't eat oysters from Tasmania, not just that one little lease in one bay. And I think we're suffering a bit of that at the moment. If we've got lower quality product going into an international market, badged as Australian sea urchin at the wrong time of the season, poorly processed, it doesn't just impact that business, it impacts the whole species. And we get, we work and we get somewhere and we get achievable and viable pricing in the marketplace, and then, our profile as a country or an area gets reduced again, by the lowest common denominator. So, it would be maybe nice to see. I think the abalone guys have set a bit of an example. They have an accredited brand in the international marketplace now with their abalone, and accredited processors and suppliers that do their live cooked canned abalone to a standard, and they've got the tick. The rock lobster guys have the Southern Rock Lobster. I can't remember the name of their accreditation, but they have accredited boats and accredited suppliers. And maybe to make our industry that's still quite young, so to speak, more robust and future-proof, we that might be an avenue or something to look at, just to get that, to stop that roller coaster or the oscillation of the price and market access by one or two. Everyone will get there in the end. It just takes practice to get there. So, in your first year or two of processing, that you definitely, to get a consistent product day in and day out and week in and week out across a 6-month season is a really big challenge. Why? We did exactly the same thing as we did yesterday, and it looks completely different at the other end. It's sloppy, or it's this, or it's that, and it's back to that. There is no secret recipe. It's being able to adjust your techniques and make that assessment really early in your day of processing. These urchins are reacting differently today. Is it because it's a full moon or a new moon, or is it related to the swell, or has there been a high amount of rainfall into the estuary, and being able to manipulate and adjust your processing techniques to react, instead of, when you've sort of got your L plates on, you get to the end of a day's processing, you go, oh, what happened there? And, so it's just, that constant training and constant improvement of your team, like any other successful, organisation, a sea urchin process, it must be a team. There's not one person that, if it gets to the packing girls and it's subpar, there's no miracle they can produce to get it from C grade to A grade. If the divers haven't looked after it properly in the boat, or it hasn't been transported properly at the correct temperatures, there's no miracle you can perform. Once the damage is done, the damage is done, and it's sort of like low grade in, low grade out. So just having the skill and the experience to adjust to those outlying sort of factors to get a constantly good product. And sometimes it's, it looks great on the day you process it, but it leaves your factory with a 10 or a 12-day shelf life, and that's when you'll see the good processors and the people that have a really deep understanding of the product. 10 days later, a chef can pull that tray of sea urchin roe out of the fridge, and it'll either look something like a baby's left behind in a nappy, or it'll look the same as it did the day it left the processing facility. So, many operators can get it to look okay and presentable for 2 days or 3 days, but that true art is having that long shelf life, so it can go through the logistics into international wholesalers through there.
Artists are often driven by intangible motivations that go beyond conventional measures of success, such as wealth or fame. Many are inspired by the pursuit of excellence, a desire to create something meaningful, or the need for self-expression. These motivations stem from a deep connection to their craft, where the creation itself becomes the reward, fueling a sense of purpose and fulfillment that transcends monetary or material gains.
Well, I guess we're just seeing now more recognition of Australian product internationally, which is really exciting because, as I said, the start of this project was to, there's that flow-on effect of helping the marine habitat, helping, the amazing Tasmanian, kelp forests that are quite significant in relation to the whole world marine habitat. So, the greater that consumption gets, the more urchins that can consistently come out. We've peaked at a 500 tonne harvest, I think, last year. And again, don't quote me, I haven't seen the actual figures. I think we're back to about 350 tonne. That'll be another, a big challenge going forward, as we've seen in many other fisheries, not just sea urchins, as the economic return grows, the harvest grows. So we need to find that nice balance that we're reducing the biome mass, letting the bottom rejuvenate, but keeping a sustainable industry and viable industry, so to future-proof it as well. But I think we've got some good people at the table. We've got good operators, every year. That, IMAS have some amazing scientists down here in Tassie, world's best marine scientists, and so they're getting a better grip of how the things are reacting to harvest and whatever else. So as the science gets better and technique gets better, hopefully we've got a successful and buoyant industry that goes long. I've got a teenage son, and his only ambition is to be a sea urchin diver. So it'd be nice to see he'll be the probably second generation. There's a couple of others that are coming through, second generation divers and processors. So I guess that's a pretty good drive.
Over the past 25 years, Dave Allen has been a driving force in the Australian sea urchin industry, dedicating himself to achieving excellence from water to plate. His extraordinary effort spans every stage, from mastering sustainable harvesting techniques to perfecting the processing of premium uni. Dave's passion for sea urchin is infectious, inspiring those around him, whether they're divers, chefs or consumers. His unwavering commitment to quality and his enthusiasm for sharing the delights of the sea urchin have played a pivotal role in elevating Australia's urchin industry to world-class standards. This is Fishtales, a seafood podcast. A Deep in the Weeds production. I'm John Susman. Follow us on Instagram at Fishtales Seafood Podcast, or email us at fishtalespodcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay tuned for more tales from beneath the surface of the seafood world every Friday on your podcast app.